All right, guys, welcome into the Gashouse gang on a Thursday. There's Bernie Miklasz. Oh, wait, this week. I do this backwards every time. I keep forgetting the camera's reversed. That's Bernie Miklasz. I'm Kevin Wheeler. Good to be with you guys. Obviously, a lot of ground to cover, Bern. Not a lot of breaking news. It's quiet still on the baseball offseason front. Some minor things here and there. But obviously, the winter meetings are coming up in a couple of weeks. So that's going to really be, I think, where things kick off.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, it's funny because we are seeing some moves being made. Like the Cubs picked up a pretty promising reliever in a trade that gave up a Class A prospect. And I'm just saying that's a relatively minor move, but it just indicates some things are happening. And Tampa Bay traded Jose Siri to the Mets, I believe. Yeah, and he's kind of a name guy. I'm not saying he's a superstar. He's an excellent defensive player and base stealer. So that was kind of a name guy being moved. And so these things are starting to happen already. You never know when something's going to pop with the Cardinals or any other major league team.
Yeah, and obviously our focus on the Cards is going to be more about the trade market, and we're going to get into that. Not that they won't hit free agency, Bern, but wouldn't you agree if they do? It's more like, let's see if we can take a flyer on someone. I don't know what. I mean, again, maybe if you trade Helsley, you're looking at a bullpen arm, something like that.
Yeah, I think they, if Chaim Bloom has any influence in this at all, and I think he will, they'll certainly ask him for his opinion. And he's got a really, really terrific eye, just looking at data and seeing, well, hey, there's a relief pitcher we should sign because we can make him better, because he's not throwing this pitch enough. And he just needs some reinforcement about his approach.
Right.
So I think this is a great winner for the Cardinals to, add to that bullpen without spending a lot of money, which actually is exactly what you want to do because relievers break down all the time. So I would expect them to address the bullpen through free agency. And I think the bench too, Kevin. I know you would agree with that.
Yeah.
And I don't want to kick dirt on Brandon Crawford, but you look back, there was nothing wrong with Matt Carpenter on the bench. His numbers as a bench player were good.
Agreed.
And he helped Alec Burleson out, and he was a positive influence. And I'm not sure. There's always this thing out there. I don't know why. This is fans of every team, and there's even this applies to media. I'm not sure why they think bench guys are supposed to come in and hit 18 home runs and slug 500. I mean, I don't. Yeah, they're bench players for a reason.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point.
And so that said, I think they probably will need to maybe get some balance based on left-handed hitter or right-handed hitter for their bench, and they got to do better than Brandon Crawford this time.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's talk a bit about a guy that's obviously he's going to be a part of this one way or another, one position or another, because of his age, because of his upside, because of what we've seen at the big level from Nolan Gorman. I think he's one of the most critical guys to keep an eye on this coming season. I mean, if he doesn't stick, if he doesn't make it, if you can't fix him or improve him, it's going to be a major problem because this is a guy that has tremendous physical ability. It's a first-round draft pick with legitimate left-handed home run power. I mean, legitimate 30, 35 homer power. We've seen almost 30, and that was in a year where he missed like 30 games. So assess that right now. I mean, and by the way, let's talk about too, Bernie, where it goes with and without Arenado, because a lot of the discussions we've had have been with at least me assuming that Arenado would be traded. But there's a lot of layers to how this whole Nolan Gorman story is going to play out.
Well, there's no doubt about it. Like, for example, if they don't trade they don't trade Arenado, part of their long-term thinking, which would be to move Gorman to third base, his natural position. And by the way, I can't assume he'd be a really good third baseman. We just know it's his natural position.
Right.
So
and he's got the arm and all that. Yeah.
Right. But if they don't trade him, it's all of a sudden it's kind of like, okay, so I guess that means that Gorman is going to go back to second base, and I guess that means he'll do some DHing, and then all of a sudden you have way too many second basemen that you know what to do with. Really, Donovan, Sajaci, and I'm probably leaving somebody out, but you would have a lot of different options at second base. Like, would Gorman play enough to give him the at-bats that he really needs to kind of get everything back? I don't think Nolan Gorman's sitting around for 2 or 3 days and then getting in the lineup. I think that would be detrimental to him. I think he's got to play. Great. If not every day, he's got to play very frequently.
Yes.
So that if they don't trade Arenado, that's the first problem in terms of how it applies to Nolan Gorman and what the Cardinals would like to do. The second thing is if he does take over third base, that's the plan. If he does, then second base, all of a sudden, you got a lot of flexibility because Brendan Donovan can be used there, but he doesn't have to be used there all the time. So JC, we assume, is going to get playing time, and it's just and then it's just a thing where you free up one position. Gorman can take up most of it, and then you can go with a more normal thing in terms of second base. Maybe JC facing a lot of left-handers. Donovan is Donovan. So it would be just a lot smoother thing for manager Ali Marmol to handle. It won't be too crowded. So I look forward to that. And I wanted to get your thoughts on this because you always have some good ideas about what you see in a hitter. What is it going to take for the Cardinals to get Nolan Gorman back on track? Because, to your point, we saw it. We saw it even in his rookie year in 2022. Yeah. And we definitely saw it in 2023. I mean, he slugged 478. He hit, like you said, almost 30 home runs. He's always going to be a streaky hitter. That's not a crime. There's a lot of streaky hitters. What did you see last year where he just utterly collapsed? I mean, over the cliff and no way to stop the fall. And they finally had to send him to the minors. What did you see? How could it have gone so drastically wrong?
Well, a couple things. I mean, obviously, and without being, a psychologist, right? Without trying to get into that, the mental side, because, when you struggle for a long period of time, you get down on yourself. And I want to stay away from that because I don't know to what degree that changed. But I'll tell you, the biggest change in his hitting profile was that his walk rate dropped. He chased too much, and he's always going to have some chase. He's going to swing and miss. You got to accept that. Everybody should accept that. He's going to strike out. He's going to swing and miss. But from 2023 to 2024, his chase rate got quite a bit worse, and his walk rate dropped as a result. And to me, fixing him is not mechanical. It's nothing like that. It's just better swing decisions. And you can do that in a virtual reality setting. You can do that in more at-bats in spring training, right? So instead of putting him on a normal kind of like starters routine in spring training, maybe we're going to get him as many at-bats as we can in spring training, as many swings as you can in live BP, because that's it. It's about swing decisions and laying off stuff that's low and away and not putting yourself in a position where you're going to be chasing changeups and off speed. And it's not easy, but we saw him do it in 2023, right? And it's not like his chase rate was elite in 23, or his walk rate was, though. If you go back, Bernie, his walk rate was, I think, in the top 15, 20% in Major League Baseball, which is pretty good. And this past season, it was just a little bit more than league average. And that was, again, the result of chasing, because not much else changed. If you look at how hard he hits the ball, his barrel rate last year in 2024, when he struggled, was in the top 2% in baseball. So he's doing some good things, but you can't barrel a ball that you can't hit. If you're swinging at that ball shin high outside half, and by the way, this applies to Jordan Walker too. To me, right, for both of them, it's swing decisions, primary number one thing you got to fix.
The one thing, when I was looking at the numbers on him, after the season, I may have written something about this on scoopsnetwork.com, but the thing that jumped out at me, because I didn't realize the magnitude of the issue, and I didn't understand it, because in 2022, he did really well against four-seam fastballs. Mm-hmm. But last year, just a total disaster against four-seam fastballs. Now, we're going to be speaking Greek to people that that aren't into StatCast stuff, and that's okay. I'm not making fun of them, but I'm just saying we're going to try to translate it for you. They have a run value for certain pitches.
Yes.
And, it's basically one neat and tidy number to tell you how good a guy was against each pitch. And you don't want to see red. You want to see blue when they run with their graph, right?
Right.
Nolan Gorman last year was a -12 run value, or hitting value, against four-seam fastballs. And to put more traditional numbers on that, he had a 162 batting average, a 333 slug, and he struck out 41% of the time. That's on a basic four-seam fastball. I don't know what happened there, because remember, going into his second year, he spent a lot of time working before the 2022 season about getting on top of those four-seam fastballs.
Yeah.
Because remember, they were getting them out high in the zone.
Yep.
So he had to change his whole approach, and he had to change basically his stance and a lot of other things. And he got on top of four-seam fastballs in 2022. And then all of a sudden, in 24, I meant to say, pardon me.
Yeah.
In 2023, he got on top of those fastballs. In 2024, it's like he had never seen them before. And I don't know how that happens. Is it a confidence thing? Is it? I always don't like scapegoating hitting coaches for everything.
Right.
Because the same hitting coaches were there that told him what he had to do going into 2023, right?
That's exactly right.
But like, how do you not all of a sudden be able to hit a fastball when the season before you were really good at hitting fastballs? And the only other pitch that he hit, all the other pitches pretty fine last year. The changeup gave him some problems. But again, man, educate the rest of us about that. How do you suddenly become helpless against fastballs? And that's a big deal for a hitter. That's a real big deal.
Yeah. Well, first, if you kind of go into his profile, he had a little bit of bad luck on the fastballs, but that doesn't explain it, right? So like 2023, he hit like 280 against the fastballs. Now that was all fastballs. It's not just four seamers, and obviously they have different characteristics. But he hit 270 there and slugged like 570. And his expected numbers were actually better than both of those in 2023. In 2024, he only hit 203 against fastballs, but the expected was 230. His slug was, I think, 420, 418, 420, and the expected was more like 470. So it may not have been as bad as it looked, but either way, a lot worse than it was the year before. So what I would like to dig into, and I'm gonna pull it up while we're talking, but I think.
But can I interrupt 1 second?
Yeah.
The only thing I would differentiate is that, you know, he didn't have a problem with sinkers at all, which is a fastball.
That's right.
You know,
right.
he was above average, and he slugged 500, which I think you mentioned.
Right.
So really, specifically, the issue was the four seamer. It wasn't the sinker. The sinker was fine. The four seamer, and the only other pitch that he really struggled with was the changeup, hitting 136 and a lot of other nasty numbers. Anyway, go ahead. I just want to throw that in.
No, yeah, it's clear it was a real problem, and you're right. The four seamer numbers jump off the page as being a really big deal and a really important to ask why that is. And a lot of times it can also be like, at what point in the count are you swinging at them? Are you swinging at the high fastball out of the zone because you're down 0-2 and you're antsy? So that's kind of why I always fall back on swing decisions. Because if you're swinging at an off-speed pitch early and now you're behind, well, now you're on the defensive. If you're swinging at fastballs 2-0 and you're missing them, that's a bigger problem, right? That could be a mechanical problem. That could be a timing problem. It can be an injury problem. There's a lot of things that it can be. But I think, Bernie, you nailed, when we look at two things that tie together perfectly, you nailed the thing that has to happen more, which is he's got to hit fastballs, right? And then the question is the how. And the how, that's where I come into the swing decisions, because there are some fastballs you're not going to do anything with. You're just not. And if you swing at them, it's an out. It's a swing and a miss. It's a pop-up. It's a foul ball, whatever. It's a wasted pitch and a wasted swing. These two things, this is the beauty of hitting, right? These two things are always tied together because I don't think his bat speed has changed. And we don't have data on bat speed that Major League Baseball measured. We don't have that before 2023. Actually, you know what? I don't think we had it in 2023.
I don't think so either. Yeah.
I think last year was the first year that was a measurement. So we don't really have anything that would show whether he went up or down, but his bat speed's above average. Like it's in the top 30% in baseball. So I don't think that's the problem, but it clearly is. When you tie it all together, like, is it a mechanical thing? Yeah, it could be. Like you said, he had to work really hard on getting on top of some of those high fastballs. And for people that are listening, you're not actually trying to get on top of it, but that approach is what keeps you from being underneath it, right? That idea that I'm going to get to the top of it, you're actually going to hit it more in the bottom third, but you're still going to be able to hit it as opposed to just swing right under it and miss. It's a really interesting dynamic to see, and they all tie together. If one of these pieces falls apart, Bernie, it leads to the other one becoming a problem.
And to your point, I don't have the season-ending stats with me, but I did something late in the season where I looked at how many times he was down 0-1. how many times he was down 0-2,
Yeah.
how many times he was down 1-2. I don't want to engage in hyperbole and overstate it, but it's when I saw the numbers, I was like, man, this is a really serious problem because if they're throwing him fastballs in the strike zone and he's not swinging at them,
yeah,
and he's being really passive, maybe early in counts, and they get him down 0-1, 0-2, 1-2, then they're going to throw him the junk, and they're going to throw him the changeup a lot. And they killed him. They killed him with changeups last year. So once he gets down in the count, he's incredibly vulnerable to all the off-speed stuff and the changeups and to some of the breaking pitches. So he was his, pardon the cliche, but Gorman was his own worst enemy in 2024. Yeah. He just did not manage counts very well at all.
Yep. Agreed.
And that was a point of just ceaseless frustration with me watching it.
Yeah.
Because this is where I will bring in the batting coach and the manager and everyone else, but maybe it's not fair. But I'm like, listen, if a 65-year-old schlub like me can like in 1 minute, right, can go and diagnose exactly what the problem is and what needs to change, how come they can't enlighten him to the point where he will change what he's doing? So the frustration with me, with Nolan Gorman, because I'm a fan, I believe in him. I really want to believe in him. The frustration just reached the boiling point for me watching a lot of this stuff last year. So how do they get him back? And here's before to wrap the Gorman discussion up, because I mentioned this and we were all exchanging text messages. You know, I hear fans saying, look, I would trade him now because if his value sinks anymore, you're not going to get as much in return. Everyone thinks, oh, he's young, we can fix him. He's 24. I understand the sentiment. I personally wouldn't do it. You got a new batting coach who's already reached out to him and basically is working with him already, Brett Brown. And he is only 24. And it wasn't that long ago we saw exactly what he's capable of doing. Yeah. I think it's a confidence issue. I think it's some mechanical things and plate approach things that they can fix. I would not trade Nolan Gorman this winter unless someone just totally blows you away, because you never say never. Right, because you do have that group of players. But my question for you is like, well, how long do you stick with him? If he gets off to a bad start again next year and it just doesn't happen again, maybe he's not as bad as he was in 24, but he's not what you want him to be, which will next year will be, in effect, his fourth big league season. How long do you stay the course with him? When do you pull the plug?
It's a great question. Bernie Miklasz, Kevin Wheeler with you here on the Gashouse Gang. Obviously, your friends at Saliga Heating and Cooling have jumped on board. Man, we really appreciate that.
Go to SaligaHeatingandCooling.com. Get all their services and their phone number. Go ahead.
Hey, it just turned cold. This is the perfect day to mention that.
That's right.
All right, so let's pick back up on that Gorman thing. How long do you run with that? To me, I'm going to run with it all of 2025. Now, if I get to a point in like late July and it looks like last year, I'm gonna pull back because I have to give opportunities to other people, right? I mean, like but he's got to get 500 plate appearances. Like if he has a bad month at the beginning of the year, that doesn't mean we're gonna write it off. So it's a really tough question because, as you pointed out, even with a trade of Nolan Arenado, you still have to balance left field, second base, third base, and DH with Burleson, Donovan, Gorman, Nootbaar, Sajaci. Okay, that's 5 guys, not counting DH time for even Ivan Herrera. So, right, you got 5-6 guys for 4 spots, even if Nolan is traded, if Arenado is traded. So there has to be a point where if someone else is taking, like say Sajaci's killing it, you got to let him keep killing it, right? you can't just, make it an endless stream of problems, but it depends on what it looks like. But to me, with this year the way it is, I have to know, and I'm not going to know if I only give him 2 months or if I give him 3 months. I've got to give him the full season, and unless it's just like it looked last year when you get to maybe the trade deadline, and then it's all right. Now we got to maybe send him down again or put him into a bench role. I do think, Bernie, that they have to make a decision sooner than that, though, as to whether or not he's going to face lefties. Like he's got to show that he can do it. If he's not doing it, then he shouldn't get the opportunity to.
I agree with that. One other thing on him, it was such a strange season for Gorman. I was just looking it up as you were talking there. So if I was looking away, I apologize. Because I wanted to make sure I had this right. On June the 4th, right? And that's pretty deep into the season. On June the 4th, after the game that night, he was slugging 508. He had an 829 OPS, and he hit a home run every 13 at bats,
which is high end.
That's real high end. And to your point about hard hit rate and barrel rate, sweet spot, all that stuff, great, off the charts. And he went from that to just like 100% melting down the rest of the way. So we know that really good young hitter, very powerful, imposing young hitter, we know that he's still there.
Yes.
He's got to get himself back. They have to give him help to get himself back. But early June of last season, his numbers were fantastic. So we know that the talent is still there. You don't lose your talent. I do think we all agree a lot of it is up here and just losing your confidence. You get screwed up in the head, and it's hitting a baseball, man. It's got to be, in the major leagues especially, it's got to be one of the hardest things to do in any sport. It's, just not easy. I don't think any of us believe that it's easy, but
they're there because they're supposed to be able to do it, though.
That's right.
That's it. We're not suggesting any of us can do it.
No.
I
can strike out. I can strike out.
No, that's true. We can all swing and miss. That's for sure. That's for sure. All right, let's continue on this similar vein, but I wanted to change it up just for a second. We'll address this from Ben in a second on Cooper Jerpy. I think a lot of it's just health, to be honest with you. He's had a lot of arm problems, and they might be banking on other teams just not taking the health chance. Although I will say this, Bern, a funky lefty that would be stashed at the back end of a bullpen somewhere on the Marlins or, a lower level team, probably not a terrible idea, if you're looking at doing that. But I might be wrong, Ben, but I didn't think he had to be protected this year.
I don't think he did.
Yeah, I that's part of it. As I'm thinking about it, I don't think he had to be. But if it was and I missed it somehow, it would most likely be the health issues because he hasn't been totally healthy and he hasn't been super consistent. But I didn't think they had to. He wasn't on the list of guys that I saw. No. Anyway, good question. I appreciate that. And we'll take all kinds of questions, by the way. If you guys want to throw them at us here, we've started a new community on Twitter. I retweeted it a little bit earlier, but we have a whole Gashouse Gang community on Twitter where you can jump in there, comment, follow, and put in things you want us to address down the road. Stuff. All kinds of great stuff that's happening with this show. So let's briefly, and we'll just do this for 3-4 minutes, Bern. But when we're talking about the trade market, I don't want to get into which prospects the Cardinals should try to get from which team. That's an endless game that's impossible to play. Even though I love looking at teams and all that, I think it's an endless conversation that doesn't go anywhere. But I'm of the position that if you're trading assets, so let's use Ryan Helsley as an example, because I don't think Arenado fits this. Arenado is that sliding scale between how much are we going to get versus how much are we willing to eat on the contract. And the more you're going to eat, the more you're going to get, but you're still not getting a top 100 prospect in that kind of a deal, most likely. But in Helsley kind of deal, you might have a chance to pick and choose. You're going to have multiple teams. I think they need to be targeting power hitters and power pitchers. If you look at their top 30 prospects, there just isn't much of either of those two things. Like Tank Hentz has a power arm. Quinn Matthews has some velo, but he's not a power arm. He's just a pitcher, like a really good pitcher. But I look up and down that list. I don't see a bunch of guys throwing 97 to 100. I don't see many guys that are going to hit home runs in the big leagues. I mean, I think Weatherholt will. I think he's going to be a 20, 25 homer guy on the low end because he's just such a good hitter. I have major confidence in him. But after him, who's a guy in the system that projects to hit for power? I mean, like
they have
maybe Chase Davis, but he basically swings and misses at Double-A pitching.
And he started to come on later last season, so there's hope for him. And listen, there's I was reading Baseball America about a 17-year-old catcher they have that he's built like Yordan Alvarez, and they're saying this guy's like an absolute beast. But he's 17.
Right. I mean, great, wonderful.
So, and he hits the ball a mile, and people are like, well, it's like, but he's 17. I mean, there's a lot that can happen. So I can't say that. But yeah, that just tells you there's just not a lot there that gets you excited. But you're right. You're right about it. I mean, you're right. And then anything they can do, this is a time you would take a flyer on a power guy.
Right.
I'm talking about a power bat.
Yeah.
As long as you also recognize, with all due respect to like a dude like Chandler Redmond, I mean, you got to be careful. It isn't just numbers. I mean, Chandler Redmond, again, he's had a really great minor league run for the Cardinals.
Yeah.
But he's an old guy playing in Double-A, and so he's hitting 30, 31 home runs. That's not, oh, wow, you got to get him up here. No, it's not. It's just not all home run numbers are the same. So I don't know what they do other than, to your point, to try to get it through trades, even if it means taking a calculated gamble on a guy that's relatively low risk but potentially big payoff, right?
Yeah. And by the way, so JC has power too. I didn't include him as a prospect because I'm viewing him as a part of the major league team. So, but yeah, he's a younger guy with power. But I mean, if you look at the organizational strengths and weaknesses, I mean, that's where there's lacking. It's high velo arms and it's high exit velo bats.
And I give a nod to John Mozeliak in the front office. Oh, wait a minute! I'm not allowed to do that. Oh gosh, I have chest pains. Anyway, when they made their trades, their sell-off in 2023, they picked up at least 3 legitimate power arms. And fill me in if I'm missing anyone. Tekoa Roby can't stay healthy, but he's a legitimate 95, 96 mile per hour guy who can actually figure into their closer role.
I was going to say, I think he might be a reliever down the road. Command problems and arm problems, yeah.
They got a young 19 or 20-year-old pitcher in one of those deals named Showalter, who throws 97, 98. And a guy that's probably closer to the big leagues than we realize. They got from Toronto for Paul DeYoung, Matt Swanson, who got big-time strikeout stuff, swing and miss stuff. And he was at Double-A last year. That's not far from the major leagues because they don't mind bringing guys up sooner on a faster timetable. So they did get 3 power arms in the summer of 2023 that at least gives them a chance. All 3 of these guys have a chance to pitch for the Cardinals in the big leagues. And that's what you do. You just accumulate these guys. You stockpile them.
Because they're going to get hurt.
Some of them are. I was going to say some of them are going to get Tommy John.
Right.
Some of them are going to make it through. Some of them are going to be a lot better than you thought. They also, and I don't know this guy's name. I forget, and maybe you can help me. One of our watchers can help us. They also made an astute draft pick in 2024. They drafted a kid later in the draft who had Tommy John surgery, and before that it was something else. But when he was healthy enough to pitch, just knockout stuff. But teams stayed away from him because they're concerned about his physical.
Yeah, I'm forgetting who it is, but I remember.
I forget his name. See, but that's a really smart draft pick later in the draft. That's a really smart draft pick.
Yeah,
and that's what you do. You take chances on guys like this because, in fact, once they break down, once they have Tommy John, you got it out of the way. And I know some people like Walker Buehler have had to have more than one Tommy John surgery. But generally speaking, you get one Tommy John, you get it out of the way. If anything, that should give a team peace of mind about taking a chance on him. But anyway, I forget his name and I apologize. But that fits what we're talking about.
For sure, 100%. All right, Bernie Miklasz, Kevin Wheeler with you on the Gashouse Gang. A lot of baseball here for the first half hour, Bern. Let's hit a couple other things here before we run out of time. And you did a really great video, and I should point out for everybody that's viewing us, the Bernie show on YouTube is fantastic. A lot of what we do here in 5 minutes as a group, Bernie's doing 15, 20 minutes, 25 30, minutes. You're going to get 30 minutes. So you get a lot more detail in that regard. So I highly recommend it, Bern. I'm not just kissing up. I mean, I love watching the videos.
I appreciate it, man. Love you. Thank you.
And your piece on Jim Montgomery was really interesting. And we're getting to the Blues here because the Blues are in, I think, an almost impossible spot, right? You're not the bottom of the league where you're looking at franchise changing players at the top of the first round. And with the lottery, you're not even guaranteed that if you're that anyway. You're not a playoff team. You're not a contender. You're capped out. You're locked into a lot of long-term deals on players that aren't playing at a big level. It might be that the only way to change the fortunes of the team is going to end up being another coaching change. And I do not want to put this on Bannister. This is not on him at all. He's a young guy. He's new to the NHL, and he's in a position where even a Stanley Cup champion coach like Craig Berube wasn't able to get these guys where they need to be. Does Jim Montgomery make any sense for this group of teams? And I guess what I'm asking is, give us the Cliff's Notes version of the YouTube video. And for people that want the more depth, they can go to the YouTube channel and find the Bernie Show.
He makes sense because he's a hell of a hockey coach. I don't want to overanalyze this in that, it's a situation. Well, I had some of the people that subscribe to my YouTube channel and I very much appreciative, but they were like, listen, how can, this team does seem to have malaise seems to set in with them and the effort's questionable. So, why do you think Jim Montgomery could change all of that? And I get the question, but on the other hand, based on that logic, no team would ever fire a coach in the NHL.
Right.
If you have a chance to upgrade, you upgrade. Now, here's the deal. The Blues also have some really good young talent. Army went out and got Broberg and Holloway. If you look at Zach Bolduc, I don't understand why he doesn't play more minutes. They've got what's his name, Dvorsky and Snuggerud will be on the way. There's others. I don't want to go down the whole list. They have a lot of young players on the way, guys with upside, with real upside, and some of them are already here, but maybe not being utilized correctly. That's debatable. Jim Montgomery has got a nice touch with players like that, because when you look at when he was Craig Berube's assistant for 2 seasons, all of a sudden Robert Thomas and Kyrou went from like young guys, they haven't figured it out, you don't know what you're going to get. And even in Montgomery's first year as an assistant, if you go back and look at Thomas and Kyrou, they did very little. The next year they took off, and Thomas and Kyrou gave Jim Montgomery a lot of credit because he spent time working with them. He had a way of communicating that broke through them. And, Thomas in Montgomery's second assistant is assistant, and basically he was the top assistant. All of a sudden, 20 goals, 57 assists. Kyrou, all of a sudden, 27 goals, 48 assists. Buchnevich credits Montgomery directly for making him a much better player. 30 goals, 46 assists. They even got 26 goals out of Barbashev that year. All of a sudden, all these young guys were playing up to their ability level. Or Buchnevich, who did well in New York with the Rangers, was doing even better. Tarasenko made a good bounce back. And I'm not saying you give the credit to Jim Montgomery, but he certainly was part of the reason why the youth of the team started to mature in a really rapid rate.
Yeah.
So he's got a good touch with young players, and every one of the guys I mentioned speak very highly of him, and they were really sad when he left because he meant so much to their careers. So if you believe you're going to be adding even younger talent, it's going to be a big part of your future. If you have a chance to grab a coach that has a record in your own organization of really enhancing the development at the NHL level of really young, talented players, you got to go for it. And the other thing is that, listen, we're all adults here. Doug Armstrong would have hired Jim Montgomery before he gave the job to Drew Bannister, but he was waiting to see if Montgomery would get fired, and he wasn't fired by the Bruins. They're very, very close. Jim Montgomery's got deep roots with the Blues in St. Louis. He still has a house here. His kids have all their aunt and uncles and cousins here, that kind of situation. Would it be fair to fire Bannister this early, for example? I'm not saying it's fair, but it's not not about fair.
Right.
Was it fair to fire the only coach to win a Stanley Cup?
Nope.
In Blues history, was that fair? Not really. Nope. I understand why it was done, but that applies to this case. It may not be fair to fire Bannister, but if they do, to bring in Montgomery, it's not fair, but I understand why it had to be done.
It's a great point.
And Jeremy Rutherford reminded us in The Athletic today, and it was the last thing I say about this. Sorry. I forgot, Davis Payne got fired 13 games into the season when he called for the bullpen for the big guy to come out of Columbus, Ken Hitchcock. I mean, he fired a guy 13 games into the season.
Yep.
So if Doug Armstrong's got the gumption to do that with Davis Payne because he could get a winning coach that was on the sidelines, and he's got a chance. And then he had the audacity to fire Craig Berube and give the chance to Drew Bannister. Now he's got a chance to hire a coach that he truly loves and truly thinks is great. Fair has nothing to do with it, man. You got to do what you got to do. I know I took a long time to get to the point to like finalize the point.
Yeah.
But that's just kind of how I see it. This is a very jaded business. Yeah. I have all these hats behind me, I don't change hats as frequently as these NHL teams, cash out coaches.
Yep. Anyway, you're right.
What do you think?
Your take was exactly mine.
I'm sorry.
It's great. I mean, because look, it's never fair. It's never about that. And it's nothing against Bannister. I don't think it's his fault. I didn't think it was Berube's fault either. But when you're capped out and you're locked in for multiple years on a lot of these guys that are not doing enough, what else can you do?
Right.
It's literally the only thing you can do in that spot. And I don't know what Montgomery's goals are. I don't know if he wants to take the rest of the year off, if he wants to jump right back. And that's part of the conversation. We just don't know that, so we're not going to bother with it. Right. We can leave that part aside.
He'll have some options, though.
Yes, he will.
So if Armstrong, in theory, if he would wait too long, Montgomery, you'll just have to take another job because there'll be some decent jobs for him. So,
yeah.
But I'm sure Armstrong will be checking in with him off the record about that. All right, do you want to coach again this year? Do you need some time off?
Yeah.
I think Armstrong will want some assurance from Montgomery that if he decides, look, I really think I need to get back to coaching, he'll let the Blues know that before he takes another job.
Yeah. Good point. Bernie, Miklasz, Kevin Wheeler with you on the Gashouse Gang, brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. You can see straight about. I always get the point up right, Bernie.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, right. There it is. I'm pointing at it. Go to SaligaHeatingandCooling.com for all the information. They're the best.
Awesome.
They're absolutely the best. Anyway.
Thank you guys for jumping on board. We appreciate it. All right, we have 3 minutes. And let's just treat this as a tease because I'm sure you and Matt Pauley will talk a lot more college football tomorrow here on the Gashouse Gang. But the showcase game is Indiana and Ohio State. It's Tom's Indiana Hoosiers against the Buckeyes at Ohio State. The Buckeyes, I think, are a 12-point favorite right now. And instead of breaking that down in too much detail now, let's just say, is there any other game aside from that one that has your attention this weekend? Is Army going to give Notre Dame a go?
The thing of it is, and it's not because I'm wearing a Navy football hat. I've got a Black Knights hat down here somewhere that I'm going to put on one of these days. God, that's a tough one. Monken's team is extremely tough. They play really, really good defense. They have a good quarterback. They can throw the ball.
Yeah,
but they just haven't played anybody. And right. I think, moving up in class to play Notre Dame, I think is going to be really, really tough for them. Now, Notre Dame slaughtered Navy, and I'm not taking anything away from Notre Dame. Navy was just spectacularly bad in that game. They were fumbling all over the place all day. It wasn't necessarily anything that Notre Dame did. So I throw that game out. I would like to think Army will give them a game. I don't know what the spread is on that. I usually look at that stuff on Friday. But
yeah, Notre Dame's like 2 touchdowns.
I think Notre Dame's playing at a pretty high level right now, so I would think Notre Dame won't have a problem beating Army. Strictly as a Service Academy football fan, and I root for Army all year long except for one day.
Yeah,
I hope Army gives them a scare, and I hope, no offense to Notre Dame fans, I'd like to see Army win the game. It would be fun for college football if they did.
Very good, very good. And by the way, the other game that is essentially a playoff game this weekend is BYU Arizona State.
What do you think about that?
I think BYU comes out. I think they're really good, but the fact that they had a clunker last week against Kansas tells me they're probably going to bounce back pretty heavy this week. But I think it'll be close, man. ASU's pretty good. That's for a spot in the Big 12 championship game. I think the loser's out, if I remember correctly, which means the loser's probably out of a playoff picture. So
Arizona State's coming on. They're really coming on.
Yeah,
that
very good.
Coach has done a hell of a job there. Yeah.
Yeah, they're really good. All right, well, we'll get more on that, I'm sure, tomorrow, you and Matt Pauley. Obviously, we've got more NFL topics that'll come up, a lot more baseball. And, Bernie, we got people that want merch for the Gashouse Gang. I think we got to get it going, man. We got to get T-shirts or something. Just something, and figure out how to do it. I'm going to talk to the boss as soon as we're done.
back in the day when I wanted to market a Rex Hudler fan club T-shirt before your time in St. Louis, because he was the Cardinals were horrible and he was their most popular player because he's running the walls. He's
one dog.
So people were saying, well, this is great, but you need to get a fan club T-shirt. And I'm thinking about it. Well, how do I do that? And Bob Tewksbury heard me on the radio talk. He said, well, I'll design a T-shirt because he's a great artist. Remember Bob Tewksbury?
Bob's the best.
We had a Rex Hudler fan club T-shirt, and it was really, really great because it was designed by a Cardinals. In fact, their best pitcher at that time. All right. So we can do it. There's always a way. There's always a way.
Yeah, if anybody's watching and you want to jump in, you make T-shirts, you design stuff, hit us up. You can DM us on Twitter. Heck, my email address is just kevin.wheeler@odyssey.com. That's the work address, and that's AUDACY for Odyssey. Hit me up, man. We'll definitely. I mean, I think it's a great idea getting the word out, having people wear it. I think we should put our Twitter handles on there a little bit here and there, but mostly the Gashouse gang type imagery would be, I think, the right way to go.
I know this. I love doing this with you and Paulie and Ackerman. I love doing this, and it's a great idea. And it always takes time to build that audience, but we're slowly but steadily starting to build that audience.
Yep.
But I enjoy these discussions. It just really, really love them. Thank you.
Yeah, same here, man. I have so much fun doing this on a, well, not every day, but I mean, I watch when I'm not doing it. So I am enjoying the Gashouse gang every day. All right, Bern. Well, I won't talk to you before. Well, I'll talk to you on DGS tomorrow. Bernie Miklasz, of course, regular Mondays and Fridays on the Dave Glover Show, Tuesdays and Thursdays with Amy and Chris. Wednesdays or once a week. Sometimes it moves around, right? With Matt Pauly.
Lately, it's been Wednesdays. So
you're basically every day with us too. So it's great to have you back.
Love it.
On KMOX. All right, that's going to wrap it up for the Gashouse gang for today. Bernie, I did it right. Bernie and Matt Pauly have the show tomorrow. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.